So let's say you finally got that trip booked. You're going to go out to Nebraska hunting Merriam's, or maybe down to Florida hunting an Osceola, and you know that you're going to be doing it yourself, no guide service, and you definitely want to mount that bird as part of your Grand Slam. Once you get out there and finally get your bird, now you're faced with a situation. You have to take care of the meat and take care of the bird in order to properly preserve it and save the meat and the skin for the mounting. So we're going to do a quick video on how to skin the bird out. That way you can save the meat, get the guts out of it, and save the rest of the skin and body to take to the taxidermist for mounting. So the first thing you want to do is check with your taxidermist, because they may have a specific way that they want to handle the situation. In my situation, I usually do a cut that goes from leg to leg, but there are taxidermists that use a cut that goes straight down the center of the breast. So go and check how they want to do it. That way you don't have any issues when you want to bring it to them. So if you watched my son's 2015 youth turkey hunt, this is actually his tom that he got. Really cool hunt. We had a good time. Sneaky tom. It took us 2 days to try and figure things out, and we had to redo our plan a couple times. But we ended up getting him, and we're going to go ahead and use him as an example on how to properly do this. Just keep in mind, when you get a bird, you're going to take it to the taxidermist. The better condition that you can keep that bird in, the better the mount's going to turn out for you. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and go to the tail, and we're going to remove the tail, just get it right out of the way. That way it's not blocking us anymore. Now you notice on the tail that there's the main tail feathers, and then a second row of tail feathers, and then these really neat looking copper feathers that are right up here. What you want to do when you're separating the tail is you're going to actually pull up the copper colorful feathers, leave those up, and you're going to leave the first row and the second row of feathers attached to the tail. So this is going to be where you're going to cut through at. You'll actually feel a spot where you can get your fingers to fit down inside there. That's going to be where you're going to make your incision and circle it around, follow it all the way to the back. Now on the bottom side, you're going to notice some really colorful feathers too. And what you want to do there is cut in between the colorful feathers and the tail, and then you can just cut it right off and set that to the side. Now that the tail's removed, it makes it a little bit easier to move around. There's less things to get in the way. And what we're going to go ahead and do now is flip the bird over, and if it's been dead for any length of time, rigor mortis is going to have set in. So you want to go ahead and just get the wings and the legs and just gently kind of get some movement back into those, flex them a little bit. First, you can move it this way a few times. You don't want to crank it too far, or you can actually rip the skin and the feathers, but just the natural motion. And then same thing at the next joint. You want to go ahead and get that so it has some flexibility again. Same thing on the next leg. Both joints. And then on the wings, just gently stretch them out a little bit. Just trying to get a little bit of movement back to it so it makes it a little bit easier to work with it. Again, don't move beyond the normal range of the bird, or you can actually hurt the feathers and the skin. The next step you're going to need to do is actually make the incision. What you want to do is start on one leg, and you're going to go on the inside of the bird, because that's going to be the easiest spot to hide when we're sewing later on. And you're just going to gently go down between the feathers, all the way through, go right across the top, and follow it straight up the next leg to the same spot. You're starting right where the skin, scaly part starts on the leg, and you're finishing on the same side over here, going right across. When you go across, if you look for the vent, you'll find that you're actually going to go across quite a bit in front of that, probably about 6 to 7 inches depending on the age of your bird. It's really important to use a sharp knife so you're not having to saw, and the more that you have to run that blade back and forth, the more you're going to start to loosen up feathers. So just separate the feathers a little bit until you can see the skin. Another tip that'll help is to get a little bit of water in a bowl next to you and just put a little bit of water on those downy parts of the feathers, and that'll help hold everything back so you can see where you're cutting. You'll also notice when I'm cutting that I've got the knife blade up just barely underneath the skin. That'll help keep it from cutting the meat too deep. So now that you've completed both legs, you just want to go ahead and join the cut between the center there. And again, this is going to be about 6 to 8 inches in front of the vent. Now that you've completed the incision from leg to leg, you want to go ahead and just use your fingers and just gently start pulling the skin back. You don't want to put a lot of pressure on it, but it'll kind of come free with your hands for the most part. If you get into any tough spots, you can go ahead and use the knife to free it up just a little bit. So what you're trying to do at this point is just roll that skin back around the legs as far as you can on each leg. Again, being gentle on the feathers. And of course, you want to avoid putting holes in the skin. Another tip that will help, as you start to get further into the skinning process, you'll notice the feathers will try and stick to the actual meat. You can take some saran wrap and cover up the meat, and that'll help those feathers from sticking as bad. Then the further you skin, just keep adding more saran wrap. Now what you're trying to do here is just skin all the way around until you can actually reach through. You don't need to go very far up on the ankle here. That can stay connected. You're just trying to skin around this area down here until you start to reach the thigh. This is the drumstick. You're just trying to reach the thigh right here. And then you want to skin as far up the breast area as you can. Now once you've completed that, you want to go ahead and go back down to the area where you made your incision down here. You're heading away from the breast, you're heading towards the vent, and just gently skin that down. You'll find the opening where you already cut through the tail, and just gently cut around that area. The skin's going to just peel back from it, and you're going to leave a hole in the center where the tail used to be. You just have to take your time through this area because the skin adheres really close to all of the little contours. Just gently pull the skin back as you're working it. Use the tip of your knife to just barely trim just that connective tissue enough to make it start to separate. Now you're going to go ahead and do this all the way till you hit the vent on your way to the tail, and at that point you just have to imagine the vent as being a tube that enters into the body, and just go towards the body a little ways and cut through. Make sure you leave a little bit of that tube on the skin because you don't want to cut in too close and actually ruin the skin in that area. You'll notice once you skin past the vent and get a little bit further, all of a sudden you'll come across a big opening. You'll feel like you cut through it first. It's actually the start of your tail opening from when we removed the tail earlier. So just carefully skin around that area, around the tailbone, and then free it around the backbone just a little bit further. Now that we've skinned it around each leg, we've disconnected the vent, we've went around the back of our tail opening, and we've went as far up the breast as we can get right now. Go to where the drumstick meets the thigh and find that joint as you bend it. And you're going to want to cut right through that joint. You'll find some cartilage in the center of that joint, and you're just going to cut through it until you can remove that leg, and the skin will still be attached, but you can disconnect it from the thigh. You might have to snip through the tendons. And then carefully roll your saran wrap back over that drumstick and just leave it in place gently to the side there. At this point, you can continue skinning up the side of this leg a little bit further to free up the skin some more. Again, you're leaving it connected at the ankle area, but you're going to find that joint down here where the drumstick meets the thigh. You're just going to cut right through all of that connective tissue, right through the cartilage, and it'll open up. Be careful that you don't tear the skin down here or up here by pulling too much. And then gently turn that around. You've always got to be real careful with these legs here since they're disconnected. Just gently tuck that back in the same position that it was originally going.